Welcome back to the Thinking Stack.
Great to be here.
So last time we really got into layer 2, moral intelligence. We talked about, that internal compass we all have, that sense of right and wrong.
Yeah, the guilt factor too.
Exactly. Guilt, judgment, and how these aren't just feelings. They're actually kind of programming our future experiences, creating feedback loops.
And we flagged that tricky issue of using karma to blame people, which is, well, it's really a misuse. Karmic abuse, as we called it.
Right. Which I think sets us up perfectly for today, layer 3.
Layer 3. Systemic foresight. This is where we zoom out a bit.
Okay.
If karma isn't just about fate, and it's more than just I do good, I get good right away,
Yeah.
then how does it work in this messy, interconnected reality we all share?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is. The core question for this layer is really, what happens next and to whom?
Okay, so shifting from the purely personal wiring to the bigger picture. Because let's be honest, most people hear karma and think,
Cosmic vending machine.
yeah, exactly. Put in a good deed, get a prize, do something bad.
Wham! Instant punishment, like a transaction.
Right. Is that completely off base?
Well, it's definitely an oversimplification. Hugely misleading, actually.
Okay.
There's even a term for it, moral capitalism with incense on top. It paints this picture of some cosmic judge keeping score.
Which isn't really it.
Not really, no. Karma's much more about dynamics, think flows, interactions. It's about patterns that emerge over time. And feedback loops, how things influence other things, often indirectly across time, space, emotions, relationships. It's complex.
Patterns.
Yeah.
Okay, so an action I take today might not come straight back to me tomorrow. Not in a neat little package I can label reward or punishment.
Precisely. The consequences are real, absolutely. Cause and effect is fundamental.
Right.
But the effects don't always follow a straight line back to the source. Not immediately, not always, obviously.
No, it's not like A leads to B leads to C hitting me right now.
Sometimes, yeah. But other times, it's more like you plant a seed over here, and maybe years down the line, something blooms way over there, maybe even in someone else's garden entirely.
But doesn't that feel chaotic or, I don't know, unfair? If the consequence doesn't land squarely on the person who did the thing, how is that even connected?
That's exactly why we need this idea of systemic foresight. We
Yeah.
have to look beyond the immediate, the obvious transaction.
Okay.
Think about that quote from the Buddha in the Dhammapada. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It starts internally with our thoughts.
Right, founded on our thoughts.
But then those thoughts, those actions, they send out ripples. And those ripples bump into other ripples, other systems, other people's lives.
So it's not a straight line at all.
No. Think more. Fractal. Like a coastline, Looks different depending on how close you zoom in, but the patterns repeat. It's recursive. It's often really non-obvious.
Non-obvious. Okay, that helps explain those classic dilemmas maybe, like why do good people suffer?
Exactly. If karma was just simple justice, that wouldn't make sense.
And the flip side, why do some, let's say, less ethical people seem to get away with everything? They seem to thrive, externally at least.
Right. These scenarios make sense if you understand that karma involves things like time delays affects ripening later,
Right.
and emotional inheritance patterns passed down, and crucially, complex systems.
Complex systems,
System.
like society, families, the economy. How does karma get tangled in that? Doesn't that dilute personal responsibility somehow?
Well, let's look at it. Someone might look incredibly successful on the outside, lots of money, power, whatever.
For sure.
But how did they get there? If it involves, say, causing harm, exploiting others, what's their internal state like? Maybe they live with constant fear, anxiety, isolation. That internal reality is a karmic consequence. Even if their bank account looks great, it's their inner programming.
Oh, the outside doesn't always match the inside, karmically speaking.
Definitely not. Now, think about someone who's genuinely kind, acting with integrity, but facing real external hardship. Maybe illness, financial trouble, things not directly caused by their actions.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Their suffering isn't necessarily a punishment, it's a condition they're navigating. But their inner world, their peace, their resilience, how they respond to that could be incredibly strong, clear, evolving.
And their response creates new karma.
Exactly, their response is key. So what we often call bad karma It's usually not a punishment. It's
Yeah.
more like a pattern repeating, an old groove.
Like a scratched record.
Perfect analogy. It keeps playing the same glitchy part. Maybe it's a pattern inherited from family, maybe something deeply learned from past experiences,
Just going.
until it gets loud enough or painful enough or just disruptive enough that you finally become aware of it. That's the opportunity.
So the suffering isn't the sentence, it's maybe the alarm clock.
Could be, yeah, an alarm clock. It makes me think of the Bhagavad Gita. I've explained this deep knowledge. Ponder it, then do as you wish.
Right. It implies agency. You understand the conditioning. Now what?
It puts the ball in your court. It's not about fate. It's about understanding the programming and then choosing.
Okay, but what about when someone does do something harmful? And crickets. Nothing bad seems to happen to them. Not right away anyway. Where's the feedback then?
Yeah, that can seem like the system's broken, right?
A little bit, yeah.
But karma often doesn't work on our preferred schedule. It needs time to ripen.
Ripen. Like fruit.
Kind of. The consequences might take years, even decades, to fully manifest externally,
Yeah.
or the impact might ripple through their relationships instead of hitting them directly. Or, and this is crucial, the consequence might arrive later as an internal shift, a change in their own awareness.
Oh, so?
As they grow, as they evolve ethically maybe, something they did years ago, which seemed fine then, suddenly hits them. Regret, dissonance, maybe even shame.
Huh. So the feedback waits for them to be able to receive it in a way.
Yeah.
Their own evolution becomes the trigger.
You could see it that way. That internal reckoning is a powerful karmic feedback loop, even if no one else ever knows about it.
That makes sense. It connects back to that inner state we talked about.
Exactly. Now let's scale this up even more. Collective karma.
Ooh, okay. This sounds complicated. Like whole families, communities, even countries stuck in cycles.
It is complex, but it's not about some mystical group punishment. It's more like systemic inheritance.
Inheritance, like inheriting.
Traumas, biases, economic loops that keep repeating, religious dogmas, gender roles that box people in.
Wow.
These things become cultural samskaras, deep-seated patterns embedded in the culture, passed down, shaping how whole groups think and act.
So it's like the software everyone in that group is running.
Pretty much. Until someone consciously decides to debug it or install something new, think of a society with a history of violence or deep inequality.
Yeah.
That history doesn't just vanish. It creates a, let's call it a karmic field. The patterns, the assumptions, the fears, they get baked into institutions, into cultural norms, maybe even into people's nervous systems over generations.
Like literally affecting biology.
Well, look at epigenetics. It's
Right.
showing how trauma can actually leave marks on our DNA expression that get passed down.
Seriously. Yeah. So my ancestors' experiences could literally be influencing my stress responses today.
It's looking that way. That's a very real biological echo of the past. Inherited karma in a tangible sense.
That really changes how you think about individual struggle within a larger context. That pull yourself up by your bootstraps idea feels, well, inadequate.
It definitely complicates it. It shows karma isn't just my stuff. It's interwoven with family, community, history, even biology.
Right.
And understanding this is crucial because this is where karma gets misused so often.
I mean,
People might say, oh, it's just my karma to be poor, or look at a group suffering and say, well, that's their karma.
and use it as an excuse not to do anything.
Exactly. It becomes a justification for inaction, for maintaining the status quo. It's a kind of fatalism.
Using a spiritual concept to avoid responsibility.
That's it. It's taking this dynamic idea of karma and twisting it into something static. It's, well, it can be intellectual laziness.
So karma isn't a sentence. You said it's more like a forecast.
Yeah, a system forecast. Based on everything happening now, the actions, patterns, intentions, this is the likely direction.
But forecasts can change.
They can, if you change the variables, if you bring awareness, if you choose different actions, if you consciously practice new patterns. The predicted outcome shifts. It requires engagement.
So the question isn't really, why me? Is this good or bad karma?
Right. The more useful questions, the layer 3 questions, are things like, what's the pattern here?
Okay.
What belief or behavior is this situation reinforcing? And maybe the deepest one, what old wound or program is making this pattern feel so normal?
Because the pattern is the message.
The pattern is what karma reveals. And the pain, the difficulty, that's often the indicator light flashing.
Pointing to the underlying programming that's causing the friction or suffering.
Exactly. It's feedback on that deeper operating system you mentioned.
So recognizing that pattern, that awareness,
Yeah.
that's the key to changing the forecast.
That awareness is everything. It's the first step to disrupting the loop.
Okay, so wrapping up layer 3. If karma isn't cosmic punishment,
Definitely not.
and it's not simple linear justice,
Nope,
and it's not fixed fate,
not at all.
then layer 3 shows us it's more like our unconscious loyalty to old programming, playing out systemically across time.
That's a great way to put it. Unconscious loyalty to the past, repeating until we wake up and choose differently.
So we shift the question from, what did I do to deserve this?
Yeah, ditch that one.
To something more like, what is this trying to show me that I haven't seen yet?
Exactly, that puts you back in the driver's seat. It's about inquiry, not victimhood.
It feels like moving from a child's view of reward and punishment to a more adult understanding of complex cause and effect and these deep patterns.
That is the systemic foresight layer 3 aims for, understanding the interconnectedness, the non-obvious links, the inherited patterns.
So we've seen how karma plays out systemically across time delays, collectively.
We've covered a lot of ground, and it helps explain why bad things happen to good people isn't some flaw in karma, but maybe a flaw in our ability to perceive the whole system.
Makes sense. So that brings us to the end of our look at systemic foresight. Where do we go next?
Next time, we get really personal. We move from the systemic and conceptual to the deeply felt.
Okay.
Part 4 is titled, Karma Lives in Your Body.
Whoa. Okay, so not just in our minds or actions, but physically.
Physically. How these patterns, these histories, these karmic loops aren't just ideas, but are actually stored, held, and sometimes replayed within our own muscle tension, our breathing, our gut feelings, our very physiology.
How our bodies hold the score, so to speak. Sounds intense.
It is. We'll explore how the body remembers and carries these karmic imprints, often completely unconsciously. That's next time on The Thinking Stack.